Before we begin, I'd like to take a second to thank our patch patron, HP. Normally, I would call this a sponsorship, but as it turns out, when you start taking corporate sponsors, they don't like it when you call other things sponsors and then charge them less. So I'm doing a little bit of retooling here, but thank you to HP. Know that when I say patch patron, I mean sponsor, and don't tell my corporate sponsors. I don't know. Let's go ahead and get this up on the wall, shall we? Yeah! So, yeah, here it is. I can see with my new monitor that it's definitely not in frame. But it will be one day. I will figure this all out one day. I actually want to thank HP for their patience. He actually bought this in June, and I'm just now getting around to it. So, yeah. And I also want to thank everyone else who is also on that waiting list. And say it'll happen. I'm sorry I'm not more efficient. Also, if you are on the waiting list and for some reason I haven't responded to you, let me know, because I feel like there is someone like that and I don't want them to get lost. I'm going to go looking for you, but if you are and you want to speed up the process, just send me a message. And I will get to you soon. That's Willy Issues, though. This is HP's segment, and I asked HP if they had anything they wanted me to say, and they did, so I'm going to read it right now. Shout out to everyone watching. I hope you notice, enjoy, and cherish all your happy moments, no matter how small or insignificant they may seem at times. Damn, that's really nice. I'm actually just going to stop talking because I don't want to overshadow that. Listen to that. So yeah, thank you, HP. Thank you for your patience. Sorry it took so long. I really appreciate you. And with that out of the way, let's go ahead and start the episode. What the hell is that hand motion? There are a lot of things that fascinate me about evangelicals. You know, their movies, their haircuts, the weirdly similar jawlines that all of their men seem to have. Of all of their little quirks, though, I think that the one I'm most curious about is their views on sex. Fucking. I grew up Catholic, which of course means that I was raised to have a healthy view on such matters. And then I was supposed to take that healthy view and keep it to myself and never talk about it with anyone ever. And also feel really bad about it. Evangelicals are different, though. It seems to me like they talk about it a lot. It's just mostly in a negative light. Or at least until they get married, at which point they start talking about it in a positive light, but in a way that's so uncomfortable that it feels negative. From my outside perspective, the evangelical commitment to teenage abstinence has been one of the defining traits of the entire religion. And I wanted to learn more about it, which is why I watched a little movie called Love Waits. It tells the story of a 14-year-old girl and her journey to maintain her V-card. And it's exactly what you'd expect a movie about chastity pledges to be like. Which is to say that it's disturbing. Speaking of which, I get a lot of comments from people who say that they have to skip my Christian videos because of religious trauma. So I wanted to take a second to say that if that's you, and you for some reason decided to give me another chance, maybe don't start with this one. This is the sort of movie where I'm nervous to even give a content warning, Because I feel like if I were to say an in-depth list of all the upsetting topics covered in the 2-hour runtime, I'd probably get demonetized. Just be aware, if there's any part of evangelical Christianity that triggers you to the point that you can't watch a video about it, it's probably in love weights at some point. I'm going to do my best to avoid some of the heavier topics, but there is only so much I can tiptoe around, so just know that what I'm about to describe to you is actually the light and breezy version of the plot. The actual movie is quite a bit darker. Also, speaking of getting demonetized, in order to talk about this movie properly, I'll need to say a certain S word a lot that YouTube doesn't seem to like. So in an effort to try and keep the algorithm from getting mad at me, I'm going to replace that word with the word muffins. So yeah, going forward, just know that whenever I say the word muffins, I mean... But yeah, let's begin.
Cheri Martin. I hear you're still a virgin.
What if I am?
Then that makes you a loser.
Okay, right to the point. I like it. Those are literally the first words that we hear spoken, which actually feels like a pretty good harbinger of what's to come, because this movie is not subtle.
Well, have you done it?
Duh. I'm almost 14. We all have done it. Lots of times.
As you've probably guessed, the girl that oddly forward tween is talking to is our protagonist Cheri, who's just moved into town for reasons that the movie explains like this.
Mom, why did you have to die? I was so good in Nebraska with you. Now it sucks. And I hate it.
See what I mean? Not subtle. The girl she's talking to is Judy, who after the concept of losing your virginity is the antagonist of the movie. She's kind of just the kid that conservative parents are worried about when they choose to homeschool. The way she's portrayed makes it seem like when she's not pressuring her peers into having muffins, she's in the school nurse's office getting an abortion. She seems personally offended by the fact that the new girl hasn't done the deed yet, so she decides to take matters into her own hands.
Look, I can help you get out of the losers club. I have a friend who's in the same condition. He only wants a virgin though. Otherwise, I would have taught him the facts of life myself. Just think about it, okay?
Okay, I'm gonna stop you right there, Cheri. Please do not think about it. And that's not because I care about whether or not you have premaritals, although probably wait until you're a little bit older than 14. Still, that's not my issue. My issue is with the fact that the guy you're being set up with is apparently a 14-year-old boy who has decided that he needs his potential mate to be a virgin. I'm not sure if I can even put into words why I find that so creepy, but it does feel like a sign that he's not the kind of boy you should be hanging around with. Unfortunately, Cheri didn't have me there to guide her, so she does think about it. And once she actually meets the kid, she seems pretty into the idea.
Is that seat taken? What are you reading?
Silver Wind. It's a story about a messed up teenage girl.
Ah, a reality story.
Are you saying that all teenage girls are messed up?
They're not an endangered species.
Okay, first things first. What the fuck is a reality story? I believe the word you're looking for there is nonfiction. Also, I have replayed that last thing he said like 20 times trying to make sense of it, and I still don't know that I have. Cheri says, "Are you saying that all teenage girls are messed up?" To which the guy, whose name is Duke, replies, "They're not an endangered species." What? Comment below if you can make any amount of sense of that exchange, because I certainly cannot. Not gonna lie, I think that this 14-year-old boy might just be terrible at flirting. Whatever though, it works, because Cheri falls for the lad and decides that she's gonna give him her gift? Ew. She starts an email relationship with him under the pseudonym Queen Elizabeth because she was the Virgin Queen, and the two of them start making plans to defile one another. And from there, I kind of thought I knew how the rest of the movie was going to play out. I thought that 50% of it was going to be emails between the two of them planning their encounter like some soulless transaction, and the other 50% was going to be Cheri and Duke getting to know each other on a personal level. The movie would then end with Cheri showing up at his door and revealing that she's Queen Elizabeth, at which point Duke would reject her because no man wants a woman who would debase herself in such a way. And I'm not saying I would condone a plot like that, but if we're being honest, it feels pretty in line with the beliefs that the actual movie seems to have. And at least my version has a structure to it, which would have been preferable. Instead, what happens is that when Cheri reveals that she's the one he's been talking to, Duke is normal about it, and then after that, we kind of just wander aimlessly from plot point to plot point. And to be clear, when I say that he's normal about it, I mean he's normal by 14-year-old boy standards. He doesn't judge Cheri for doing what he's planning to do himself, but he's also, well, let's just say he's still not a particularly great flirt.
So, how do we get started?
You're asking me? I've never done this before. Maybe we should start off with a hug?
You know, you fit right into my arms like you're made for them.
Calm down, Duke. I think as a general rule of thumb, you should know someone for at least a week before you go saying stuff like that. Although to be fair, Cheri does seem to be on the same wavelength.
Hey, did I say something wrong?
Oh, Duke, it's me. It feels really good to be in your arms. It makes me feel safe. I haven't felt like this since my mom died.
This is nice, isn't it?
Yeah. It's really hard to imagine that sex could be any better than this.
Maybe they should do it. I mean, not actually, because they're children, but I definitely think they shouldn't be waiting until marriage. The way the movie portrays them, these two are soulmates who are bound to be together for the rest of their life. And I think that the implication here is that they shouldn't sully that by having muffins too soon. And obviously they shouldn't do anything until they're ready, but if they get to a point where they are, I feel like they shouldn't just wait for the sake of waiting, because I think that's more likely to sully things. That sort of thinking is gonna elevate muffins to this impossible dream that they spend their entire lives anticipating. And when that happens, I feel like they're bound to be disappointed. No offense to Duke, but I can't imagine that he's very skilled in that regard. Also, they're young, so if their relationship really is destined by God to be their endgame, why do they want to jump to that already? If it's meant to happen, it'll happen eventually. And until then, they should take the time to get to know themselves first, Go out, have fun, figure out what you like. I'm not saying that Duke is gay, but he's probably gay based on the fact that he's an evangelical boy who's loudly proclaiming his desire to remain a virgin. In my experience, it's a 50-50 chance there. Maybe I'm just a horrible heathen slut, but I can't imagine a worse idea than waiting until marriage, because that just means that you're bound to learn new things about each other after you've said I do. And if those things aren't good, then it's a lot harder to deal with them than if you do it beforehand. And you'd think that that would at least be taken into consideration because this movie makes it very clear that it is not in favor of divorce.
Divorce sucks. It's like cancer. It robs us of the people that we love.
But yeah, obviously they don't end up going through with it.
I want you to know I didn't want to have sex with you. I mean, I didn't want to do it with a girl I had feelings for. Gosh, this is harder than a solo.
A solo? You sing?
No, I play flute.
Alright, that is not what I thought he meant when he said a solo in this context. I thought maybe it was slang I hadn't heard yet. Also, yeah, he plays the flute, which is important because Cheri also plays the flute. And going forward, they spend a lot of time channeling their muffinal frustrations into competing over who will be first chair.
It's not too late. You can still join. And if you're good enough to make it the second chair, you can sit next to me.
You mean after I make first chair, you can sit next to me?
Bring it on, girl. Let's see what you got.
Maybe 75-25. Not for nothing, but I don't think I've ever met a straight Duke who wasn't a yellow lab. After they finish hugging, Duke walks Cheri home because they're instantly boyfriend and girlfriend now.
So, Duke, what do you want to do about these feelings you said you had for me?
I don't know. What should I do with them?
I don't know. I've never had a boy tell me he had feelings for me before.
First time I ever told a girl that.
Okay, yeah, they are definitely not ready for muffins because clearly they can't even properly walk themselves home yet. They are in the middle of the road towards the side of oncoming traffic. I can't believe I'm saying this, but somehow in this evangelical film aimed at pushing repression on children, that is the part that pissed me off the most. Luckily for them, the only car coming is being driven by Cheri's dad.
Cheri, what are you doing?
Dad, just walking home?
From where? Your bus stop isn't anywhere near here. Get in the car.
But Dad...
Don't argue, I'm in no mood.
Cheri's dad is kind of a dick. And that's partly on purpose. It's implied that he's been going through a rough time since his wife died, and that's why he's slacking as a parent. But even with that excuse, I still feel like a lot of the things he does are inexcusable.
Starving. Supper ready? You okay?
Oh, I spaced. I forgot all about supper. I'm so sorry, Dad.
Sorry's not gonna stop the growling in my stomach, is it?
I already said I was sorry. What more do you want from me?
I want you to be on top of things. I rely on you to be the woman of the house. I need a good meal. Is that too much to ask?
I just turned 14.
Maybe I'm just coming from a very privileged place with very doting parents, but I don't think that there's ever a way to fully justify saying, "Where's my dinner?" to your 14-year-old child. I don't know, it all just feels a wee bit Cinderella-y to me. He's also extremely Muffins negative with his daughter in a way that feels very regressive. But based on the way he talks, I kind of get the sense that he learned how to be a parent by watching a single episode of a Tim Allen sitcom.
You know the rule about getting my permission to leave the house. You're on the honor system with this latchkey arrangement. I can't be at work worrying about you every day, and you know my rule about guys.
How can I forget? You remind me enough.
Obviously not, since I just found you walking with some strange guy.
He's not strange. He was on the football team.
Oh, that makes me feel a lot better. Obvious proof of a low testosterone level.
I've never understood all these parents who are like, no dating. Like obviously I don't have a kid, so maybe I'll eat my words on this one day, but it just seems so dumb to me. I feel like most people look back fondly on their young romances. It's what like 99% of music is about. So wouldn't you want your kid to have those memories? Obviously, you don't want them to do something they're not ready for, but if that's the case, then I don't know, maybe tell them that. And then once you do, tell them everything they need to do in order to do it safely so that when they inevitably ignore you, their lives won't be potentially ruined as a result. I don't know, maybe I'd just be a bad dad, but I feel like if I was worried that my kid was going to get themselves pregnant, my response wouldn't be to try and lock them away from the world. It would be to send them to school every day with a lunchbox full of condoms and a little note that says, remember that you don't have to keep it if you don't want to. And then, if and when they need them, hopefully they'll reach for one of those condoms and think of me. And with any luck, the thought of their father during a moment of passion will be enough of a boner killer to stop them from going through with it. And that's a joke, but only kinda. I do think that by making muffins this forbidden fruit, it does probably make it more interesting to kids. I don't think it's a coincidence that as parents have become more open, kids seem to have gotten less interested. It makes sense. I don't particularly care for strawberries, but if somebody told me that strawberries were the greatest thing you'll ever experience in your life and then told me that I'm not allowed to have strawberries, I would probably try a strawberry the second the opportunity presented itself. And what makes matters worse is that the dad is sending some pretty mixed messages here because it feels pretty obvious that he himself is a very horny individual. At one point, we even see him bring a woman home that he picked up at a bar.
Oh, hey, honey. I want you to meet Gloria.
Hi.
Again, not apparent, but shouldn't you be doing that in a bedroom? Not only is there a good chance that someone will walk in, as we've just seen, but also, isn't it kind of gross to have muffins on the couch where your daughter sits? What if you get crumbs everywhere? And what makes this all the more frustrating is that the dad isn't even religious. I could get repressing your child to try and keep them from going to hell. There's dignity in that. But that is not what drives him.
I don't know why you're going so ballistic here.
Because I'm a male. I know how males think, or in many cases don't think. Ever heard of a one-track mind? That's what boys have. I was 14 once.
So basically what you're saying is that you're worried that boys will treat your daughter the way that you treat women. That feels like more of a you problem. Unfortunately, rather than reflecting on his own misogyny, he decides that he no longer trusts her to stay by herself when he goes away for the weekend.
I have an emergency trip. Boss told me to go home and get ready. I'll leave first thing tomorrow. And now I have to find a babysitter.
Babysitter? Dad, I'm 14.
Exactly. Too young to stay alone.
I stay home alone all the time.
Did. That's before I found you running around with a boy.
Well, where are you going to find a babysitter?
I'm hoping Mrs. McAllister next door will accept the job.
Good thinking. No bad can come from a child staying alone with an adult that you don't really know. Luckily, it does work out. The neighbor is a sweet older woman who kind of talks like Patty Mayonnaise on Quaaludes, and the two of them bond over the flute. The neighbor is also a flautist. There are a lot of flautists in this movie. Despite her initial hesitation, Cheri actually ends up having a great time with Mrs. McAllister.
Cheri, it's time for bed. Time sure does fly when we're having fun. Wow, it was flying.
Alright, that didn't actually seem like they were having a particularly great time, but they say they were enjoying themselves, so I'm going to take their word for it. Before that party fully winds down, Mrs. McAllister makes a request of Cheri.
Do you mind if I pray with you tonight? I haven't done that in such a long time and I miss it.
I haven't done it much since my mom died. Go for it.
I know this was meant as a nice little moment to show how close the two of them have become, but I feel like if I were a 14-year-old staying with an older person I had never met, and they asked me to pray with them, it would make me very nervous. I think I would probably think they were trying to recruit me. Which I guess she kinda is, because after this, she starts taking Cheri to church with her. Naturally, this results in her getting involved with the Chastity Club, which leads to what I would argue is the most important scene in the film. I'd almost call it the climax, but I don't really think this movie has enough of a plot to have a climax. Which I guess is appropriate. Basically, it's just the first meeting of the group that Cheri attends. But the way it's set up allows the movie to just say all the talking points about abstinence that it wants to directly to the audience. So yeah, there is a lot of crazy shit here. And I'm probably gonna have to spend a lot of time talking about it.
Well, let's get started. Here's my first question. What is the most effective form of birth control?
Spermicidal lubricant.
Abstinence?
You are correct.
Damn it.
Contrary to some media reports, no one gets pregnant from abstaining.
Okay, presumably you believe that at least one person got pregnant from abstaining. That's kind of the basis of your entire religion.
You see, when detractors say that abstinence doesn't really work, what they're saying is people have a hard time from abstaining.
Yes? Does she think that people who argue against abstinence-only education are saying that abstinence doesn't work because you can get pregnant from it? I feel like most people who teach a comprehensive muffins education would probably begin by saying exactly what off-brand Nikki Haley just did about abstinence being the most effective form of birth control. They just also acknowledge that traditionally, that doesn't stop kids from doing it anyway. So it's best to give them all the information possible to allow them to make the safest choice. It's kind of like if it's raining really bad, you might tell someone to stay inside. But then if they say they have somewhere to go, you'd probably tell them to take an umbrella. That doesn't mean that you don't still think they'd have a better chance of staying dry if they stayed home. Actually, I don't think that this analogy is really necessary. I feel like it's pretty obvious already that what she's saying is really dumb.
That's why we're here tonight. I want to encourage you and strengthen you in the knowledge so you can resist those temptations when they come. And believe me, they will come.
And that's not the only thing.
Is that the only reason we're here? To talk about abstinence and how to avoid pregnancy? Jenny?
No way. I mean, we're supposed to look at this topic from God's viewpoint, and He says in the Bible that fornication is wrong.
What does fornication mean?
Sex. Actually, there's a really big difference. Fornication is sex between two people who aren't married.
You are correct, Duke.
Actually, there's a big difference between shut up, Duke. One of the things that makes this scene feel so unsettling to me is the fact that it's a discussion about intercourse that is mostly being had by a bunch of virgins. Not only does it make it difficult for me to take any thoughts being shared here all that seriously, but it also feels like it kind of defeats the point of what they're going for here. I'm all for helping kids find ways to avoid giving into temptation, but I feel like you do that by, keeping them busy and getting them on, a gymnastics team or something. Actually, no, that locker room is probably Bone City. Keeping them in a windowless basement and discussing abstinence once a week isn't keeping them away from muffins. It's just giving them a warped view of it. I'm sorry, but there is something off about a 14-year-old boy who casually whips out a dictionary definition of fornication. The fact that he can do that leads me to believe that this stuff is actually a huge part of his life, but only the aspects of it that aren't enjoyable in any way.
Is sex in a marriage ever wrong?
That's a really good question. Anyone want to try to answer that for her? Madison?
If it's kinky or perverted, like the guy wants to chain his wife to the bed or use a whip or inflict pain. God created sex to be a loving act between a husband and his wife. If it involves animal action, it's wrong, even if they are married.
Thank you, Madison. Yes, God did design marriage to be so wonderful and intimate between a husband and a wife. And you don't ever want to make your loved one feel uncomfortable or inferior.
Okay, so what's upsetting about that is that the idea that the woman might also be into it does not seem to have crossed that church lady's mind. I feel like we're all in agreement that nobody should be disrespected in the marriage bed, but I feel like the way that happens is by, I don't know, checking in, making sure everyone's on the same page. The way the movie is talking about it right now makes me feel like it's operating under the belief that it's up to the woman to submit to a man's desires. And because of that, it's up to a man to keep their lovemaking as vanilla as possible to make sure she's not forced to do anything she doesn't want to. And I will be honest, I don't know that this is the best system. I don't really trust men to make decisions with women's well-being in mind, just look at all of human history. And that's before you take into account the fact that the men we're dealing with here have been raised in a religion that teaches you that your partner's role is to be subservient to you. I very much can't imagine that that helps matters. And hell, even if the guy is doing his best to be as respectful to his wife as possible, I still feel like doing things this way isn't necessarily bound for success because, what if the wife doesn't want to be respected? Making sure that everyone is enjoying themselves is important to the longevity of a relationship. And when not everyone is, it makes the possibility of divorce that much more likely. Which again, according to this movie, is very bad.
Divorce sucks. It's like cancer.
Unsurprisingly, this meeting isn't just about acts between two people. They also discuss the morality of doing a solo.
All right, so let's talk about this. What about should we be concerned with it? Should people be free to look at it? Bobby?
People get addicted to it just like alcohol or drugs.
Yeah, unfortunately they do.
Okay, it doesn't seem fair to call that teenage boy out like that. Bobby, you look like an expert on touching yourself. What do you think?
I think some guys look at go all crazy or something. After that, they might someone.
Yeah, and that's very sad when that happens.
There are so many legitimate criticisms that they could have brought up here, but actually, you know what? No. I'm just not going to try with this one.
My mom got a divorce as a result of She told me that my dad looked at all the beautiful, slim models and then he was unhappy with her ordinary body. It's not fair to some wives who get a little heavy from having kids and stuff. It makes men forget the vows they made at their wedding to cherish their wives.
You see, that's a legitimate thing to say on this subject. Although the way that they said it is still pretty weird. For one thing, why is this mother telling her teenage daughter about her father's addiction to jacking it? I feel like there are some things that can wait until you're a little bit older. Also, that sort of addiction is genuinely a problem for a lot of people and has destroyed quite a few relationships. But I think that the problem there is a lot deeper than normal women not being able to compete because their bodies have become super gross from having babies. Plus, not for nothing, but I feel like looking at a lot of dirty pictures and not being attracted to your partner anymore is potentially a chicken and the egg scenario. A lot of the arguments that are made in this scene feel a bit warped to me, and I think that's because they're kind of being retrofitted. They all start with the conclusion that the only proper way to express one's muffinality is within the confines of a marriage, and then they work their way backward from there. And as a result, they don't feel all that persuasive. Like if you take that girl's mom, for example, I think that if you were to look at her situation based in the general ground rules of Christianity, the conclusion you'd get to is that she needs to work to make herself look more like the models her husband likes in order to please him. I feel like they only care about her feelings here because that supports their ultimate argument.
There was an Englishman named Edmund Burke who once said, "All that is necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing."
Okay, genuinely, if they tried, I don't think that it's possible for them to have chosen a worse quote to use in order to preach abstinence. Also, when did fornication become evil? Like, I get how learning to control your baser instincts might be considered a virtue, but to say that failing to do so is evil? When muffin trafficking exists? If you stop to think about all the actual evil that exists in the world, the idea that anyone would give a fuck about people rubbing their naughty bits together is completely cuckoo bananas. Of course, the movie would probably argue that it's not us giving a fuck that matters. It's the big guy upstairs.
Do you want to stand before the King of Kings and Lord of Lords on Judgment Day and tell him why you didn't get in there and fight? I certainly don't.
Okay, I get that he's omnipotent and all-powerful and all that, but do you know how busy Jesus is going to be during the apocalypse? I have to imagine that caring where someone's stuck at their senior year is going to be very low on his list of things to do that day. Also, even if he's not happy knowing that people fornicated in their lives, I can't imagine that he's going to be that much more pleased to know about the alternative. Lord, my high school girlfriend tried to make me give in to temptation, and even though I wanted to, I resisted her advances and ended up in my pants instead. Oh. Neat. And that's the thing that I feel like abstinence education largely ignores. This is a biological function. People who have the urge to have muffins are going to have the urge to have muffins. And if they don't, that urge is going to manifest in other, stranger ways. I think it's totally possible to choose to be celibate, but I don't really think it's possible for any of us to be pure. Because at the end of the day, we're kind of just a gross, weird species. And speaking of weird, you might be wondering why this adult woman has decided to devote her time to telling kids how to keep it in their pants, and she actually does give a reason. It's exactly what you think it is.
When I was 17, I had a boyfriend who I loved, and he loved me. And after a while, he wanted me to give myself to him. And I didn't want to. But he said that he would break up with me. And so after a while, I gave in. And despite all his guarantees that everything would be okay, I got pregnant.
There's this very funny comedian named Hampton Yount who used to have this joke in his act about this really fucked up anti-drug ad that they used to play all the time. I apologize in advance for mangling it, but go check him out. He's very funny. Basically what happens is this girl goes to a frat party and smokes weed, which causes her to black out. And it ends with a frat bro going into her bedroom and closing the door, with the implication being that he's about to do something very bad. The message there is supposed to be that you shouldn't smoke because it can lower your inhibitions and lead to bad things happening as a result. But as Yunt rightfully points out, the actual message should probably be not to assault people. And I often find myself thinking about that bit when I'm watching these Christian movies, because I feel like they miss the actual message a lot. Like, I think that this story could be a good way to teach kids about consent and respecting people's boundaries in a relationship. Instead, it just kind of devolves into a lot of anti-abortion gibberish.
I was so scared. I didn't know what to do. I certainly did not want to tell my parents. So, he wanted me to have an abortion. I didn't want to, but I didn't see any other choice either. So he made all the arrangements. But something went very wrong at the clinic that day when I was aborting my baby. I almost died from the complications. And as a result, I can't have any more babies.
Every single one of these movies I've watched that brings up abortion mentions the possibility of accidental infertility, and it very much feels like another one of those retrofitted arguments to me, because, like, would they really care if it didn't support their message? Let's be honest here, and under normal circumstances, they don't really give a crap about female health. Also, it's just not a good argument to me. Like, I don't want to make light of people who are on the receiving end of medical complications, but saying that people shouldn't be allowed to choose what to do with their own bodies because they themselves had a bad experience with it is kind of along the same lines of saying that you got sick at the Wisconsin Avenue McDonald's, and so now we should illegalize all hamburgers. Still, regardless of the intent behind it, it is undeniably a horrific story. And at least she's using it to teach kids that they shouldn't stay in a relationship with someone who doesn't respect them. Right?
And you know that boyfriend who promised that he would stick around and take care of me? Yeah, that didn't happen.
Oh my god, why would you want him to? Him leaving her is the only good thing to come out of that story. So it feels weird to me that she would use it as her big closer. It makes me think that she wishes he would have stuck around, which feels like a bad lesson for kids. I often find myself feeling grateful that I wasn't raised evangelical when I'm watching these movies, but I don't think that that wave of relief has ever been more palpable than with this scene. From what I understand, nothing that happens here is that far removed from reality. And while I find that fascinating from an outsider's perspective, I do see how it could be quite damaging when you're the one being subjected to it. I get why people tell me they can't watch these videos more and more with each one that I make. And though this scene has already provided us with enough religious trauma to put a therapist's kids through college, I haven't even gotten to the most upsetting part yet. That comes at the very end of her speech.
Listen to me, guys, listen. If you don't hear anything else I say tonight, listen to what I'm going to tell you. There are consequences to your sin and to the choices that you make. May not be immediate, but there are consequences to sin.
I know that might sound innocuous compared to some of the other tripe that she spewed in that multi-purpose room, but believe me when I tell you that the way the movie plays that thought out to its natural conclusion is something truly evil.
There was a woman asking for a prayer for her teenage neighbor who got attacked last night. She got all slashed up by some creep because she wouldn't have sex with him. She'll never look the same again.
That's terrible.
That girl was Judy.
So, little reminder for those of you who are like me and don't remember characters' names. Judy is the bully who set Cheri and Duke up in the first place. And maybe I'm just reading too much into this, but after what that church lady just said, it very much feels like the movie is suggesting that the teen girl is being punished for her tarnish ways by being stabbed in the face. Which seems harsh.
Judy is freaking out. None of the people she called friends have come out to see her, and the doctors are keeping her restrained and drugged to make sure she doesn't hurt herself.
It is at this point that I would like to take a moment to remind you guys that I am giving you the sanitized version of this movie. There are parts that I didn't discuss that are darker than that. Not by a lot, but they're there. Judy's fate is gruesome. And it's clearly an extreme effort on the filmmaker's part to try and scare kids away from giving into their carnal urges. And while I'm not going to sit here and lie by saying that stuff like this never happens, it still feels wrong to use this sort of shit as an argument against having muffins, because, like, muffins didn't do this. Some asshole with a knife did. And really, I feel like you can make a similar argument about a lot of the things this movie has to say about boning. Save for pregnancy, none of them are the consequences of muffins. They're muffins adjacent. They arise from having muffins, but I don't think you need to directly engage in muffins in order to experience them. Since I started making these videos, I developed a theory that the things conservative Americans are obsessed with can be organized into two main categories. The first is things that they love so much that they end up elevating them to the level of a god. This includes guns, Trump, God obviously, anything that's powerful and seems to them like it will fix all their problems. The second obsession is stuff that they can demonize blindly because they think that they themselves will never be demonized for said thing. Abortion, illegal immigration, homo-muffinsality, and whatever else doesn't really affect them, allowing them to feel holier than thou by talking about how terrible it is. And I think what makes the topic at hand so interesting is that it's kind of both. It's a powerful force in conservative lives that they obviously love, but due to the generally private nature of it, they can stringently gatekeep standards for it without fear of what might happen if they themselves fail to meet those standards. So then they get their wires crossed. They end up raising it to the level of a god, but it's more of a scary, wrathful Old Testament god. You're supposed to revere it, yes, but also fear it. Don't practice wrong, obey all the rules, and for the love of all things holy, don't take its name in vain, because otherwise, it's gonna get ya. And unfortunately, I don't think that this way of thinking is limited to just Christians. The church's grubby little fingerprints are all over societal views on the matter. I'm literally not saying its name in vain right now. And I get it. Kids should get to be kids and not have to deal with this stuff until they're ready. And if we lived in a world where we completely just let all of our basest desires roam free, they probably wouldn't get the chance to do that. This stuff is important. But at the same time, it's also kinda not. I feel like the way people talk about it when you're a kid, you start to think that intercourse is like some sort of baked good, you know? You mix your flour with your sugar, with your eggs, and it all combines to create some amazing new thing, unrecognizable from the sum of its parts. In reality, though, muffins is not, well, muffins. I'd say it's more like a sandwich. You put this on top of this, and even before you take a bite, you kind of know what it's going to taste like. Nothing magical happens when one set of genitals comes into contact with another. Yeah, it changes things, but not in a way that's really worth all the hubbub. Things like virginity and purity and all the other dumb crap that gets pushed by the abstinence-only crowd are all things that we kind of just made up. The only thing they mean is whatever meaning you decide to give them. The reason it's good to wait isn't because it's inherently bad on some cosmic level if you don't. is just because you'll have a much harder time navigating what comes next if you do it before you personally should. It opens you up to this whole new version of the world, one that's complicated and fun and weird and gross and scary and exhausting and ultimately great. But once you get there, there's no way of going back to the world you had before. So yeah, waiting is good, but the fact of the matter is that I don't think that waiting really solves every problem, because I think that there are a lot of paths that lead to that new world nowadays that don't involve doing it. I feel like the right's rallying cry recently has been, don't muffinalize children! Don't muffinalize children! Actually, I'm probably late enough into this video that I can drop this muffin bit. Don't sexualize children! And like, I want to make it very clear that I am all for not sexualizing children. Like, I truly cannot stress that enough. But if you're forcing them to spend their time thinking about all this stuff and making them hold it up like some magical shining star on the horizon that they need to follow, and filling their heads with all the terrifying consequences of what it might possibly bring, then maybe you already are. And yeah, I feel like I stopped talking about the movie and kind of just started ranting, but I feel like you guys probably get the gist at this point. Basically what happens is that everyone takes a chastity pledge and their lives are better because of it. Like, even the dad does. It's weird. He gets into a relationship with that church lady, and then the two of them give each other purity rings. But yeah, I'm going to call it there. So, thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, share, comment, share some more. I feel like sharing is a good one. I don't know. I actually really like this one, so hopefully it does well. We'll see. Usually when I say that, they don't. But this one will have sex in the title, so who knows. Also, if you really want to support me and you have some extra money to spend, you can consider giving to my Patreon or super thanksing me, which, speaking of, I have some super thanks to super thanks back. Alright, so if I miss you, please let me know and I will thank you. But I don't really have a good system here. So thank you to Soft Sad Boy, Smarks, 5147, Sorry Sod, The Glow Cloud 1340, Toxic Soup, B Bureau 12, and Laura Chow. I might have also doubled up on people. I should start keeping a more official list. But thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It really helps out the channel. Am I still talking? That's the end of the episode. Goodbye. Just kidding, it's not the end of the episode. It's the beginning of the part that people tell me they like the most. So I'm going to pose for a thumbnail while my patrons' names scroll. And for this one, well, first thing, I'm going to try and get my big hammy thighs out of the frame. And secondly, I'm just going to be like, what? Like, it's like, I truly can't stress how reprehensible this movie was. So I'm going to do my normal, like, problematic that everyone makes fun of me for. No one thinks about me enough to make fun of me for that. I make fun of me for it. But it's really justified here. The movie is very problematic, and I feel like at least 100 people are currently talking about it in therapy right now. So like, let's need to make this fatter, because if it doesn't, it's hard to edit. So there, like, hammy thighs. Seriously? Seriously, church lady? Terrible church lady. Bad church lady. She wasn't the worst character. The worst character was the dad. He's a weird, gross person. Feel like any, like, I don't know, I have a weird face. I feel like if I was just like, I don't know if this makes sense, but the more I do this, the more it becomes obvious to me why just like generically handsome white boys have like a really good chance at doing well on here. So yeah, I gotta get more generically handsome. Whatever. Nobody comment that I am. I won't believe you for one thing. What? I'm like, ouch, you know. Like, so Tyra says that like women pouch their lips, so like, and men are supposed to like jut out their chin. I don't know if that applies to me because I already have a pretty big honker of a chin going on. They say, I looked into it once. I went to an orthodontist because I thought I need braces, and he was like, no, you just need to, one day you'll probably need to break your jaw and push it back. Which I'm probably not going to do unless I really need to, because that sounds awful. But I have a really bad underbite. What am I talking about? Oh no, okay, I'm gonna then one like, all right, one of those will be in there. I've just been going on for 22 minutes, and sometimes my camera glitches, and then I have to record it. I'm gonna stop. Okay, I gotta stop.